When we convened here together, not 36 hours ago, I reminded all of us of something we had lost. 5 years of our shared humanity, to climate calamity, to financial insecurities, to the after effects of a global pandemic, which, by the way, just an hour ago, the World Health Organization declared as over. But that the inequities and inequalities remain, and that we had yet to make measurable what the war in Ukraine, what the violence in Sudan, what the effects of the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria would do to us collectively. And yet, I think over the last 2 days, we have seen so vividly, so richly, that there is cause for optimism. And so much of that optimism is in this room and is, again, I remind you, in the 7 principles of our new generational contract. If you were in this room just now, you will have felt that sort of magic that happens when the individual realizes that they have a role to play in taking up action for change in their responsibility, right? That's our very first principle. Change can happen when that individual responsibility is felt. But care is needed of the community, the hands on the back. We talked about that yesterday in our great question on where is the love in governance change, right? And we heard it so vividly from our Nobel Prize laureate, Alexandra Matvichuk, because we need to keep the humanity of those that are suffering and fighting for freedom in mind. We have to apply that care. And that voice, that dialogue, we charged you at the beginning of this meeting to speak with 5 people who are not from your group, to begin to challenge your bias, to listen to one another equally, openly, to hear each other's voice, and then to find a way to principle number 4, principle number 5 already, which is collaboration. And that is really, truly, I think, what we jointly wish us to go forth and do from this moment on. And we also understand together that hindsight and foresight, that pause, the negotiator's pause, pulling yourself away from urgent crisis to do the necessary work of coming together and thinking together how we can get ahead of crisis to rebuild toward that idea of joint humanity, toward principle 7, regeneration. That, to me, those 7 principles make me profoundly optimistic, and seeing this interaction and being a part of your conversations over the last 2 days has been my honor, my privilege, but to know that these conversations will go on from here make me profoundly joyful. So thank you, first of all, for that, for resitting yourselves so beautifully, for taking up that mantle to listen and to be with one another. So thank you for that.
Now, let us take a brief look back into what we've just heard in the sessions before. We've heard how change happens, we've heard about migration, and there were individual statements that really got me thinking. For example, Ayo Tometi, who shared that her whole idea of activism started because of her questions with migration. And there were some inspiring moments, and we want to share them with you here again. So this session will explore the choices and challenges facing social movements today, continuing the tradition of the dialogue here of the St. Gallen Symposium.
Our vision is big. Our vision is big because the need is that big, it's that profound.
If I choose to be an activist, I think it's more of that is the platform I have chosen to create awareness about the impacts of the climate crisis. So I think it's just realizing which part, where you lie on that puzzle, and then fitting in, so that the whole puzzle is completed to ensure that we have a better future for all of us.
Right? And it reminded me of something Audre Lorde said. There is no such thing as a single-issued struggle because we don't live single-issued lives.
So for me, the place of individual responsibility, you understand your privilege and you do something about it.
I can't single-handedly stop global warming. I can't, even in my small community or neighborhood or city, I'm not going to change what's going on scale, right? And so corporations, governments, they're the ones who do have the power, the scale of influence. They're the ones who are making large decisions that do impact our lives.
What is the economic value we could have if we had migration into respective countries? And the number that you gave, 100 billion, was only for Germany, but if we would look to that, of all of the countries that actually have a shortage of workers, skilled workers and not skilled workers, we would come up to that crazy number of 1 to 3 trillion US dollars.
Number one, we need to remember that migration, it's a topic, I mean, it's a very complex and multidimensional phase topic. It goes to human rights, from human rights it goes to business, and then from business it goes all the way to development. Then we have the issue of security will come. Why are these people coming? That's the first question you should ask yourself. Are they only coming to get a job? Are they coming to get a better life? Or are they coming to contribute to make, economical growth in the receiving country?
Migration always happens on a network basis. A lot of countries actually only go to a neighboring country, same religion, same culture, and especially where they know someone already.
It has to do with familiarity. Those people who have the least exposure to people from other countries are the most concerned about their own well-being and so on and so forth. Those who have intensive interactions usually don't have that at all. And most notable, you see this at international universities where young people like you guys are coming together and pretty much work and live together.
I would like companies and countries to actually think strategically about migration and do structural changes to do it differently than they did before.
Well, structural change also takes the role of government and governance, and that's why it's our pleasure to welcome now to stage to represent the Swiss government, ladies and gentlemen, the federal councillor Guy Parmelin, longtime Swiss People's Party representative, now leading the Federal Department of Economic Affairs, Education and Research. So he is in the right place at the right time. Federal Councillor Parmelin, please join us on stage.
Ladies and gentlemen, your symposium this year is dedicated to what you call a new generational contract. I'm not a lawyer, but according to the Swiss Code of Obligations, a contract requires the mutual expression of intent by the parties. In order for there to be a contract, there must therefore be a desire to act, and above all, the same desire must be shared by all parties. If these conditions are not met, the contract is deemed to be imperfect. So much for the form. As for the substance, I imagine that each of you has your own views on such contracts. I'm grateful to the organizers of this event for giving me the opportunity to offer mine, and thank you for your warm welcome. We are currently facing major challenges. I am thinking here first of all of climate change and the energy transition. The depletion of our water resources is a cause for concern, and our environment is clearly suffering from not having been adequately protected, especially since the Industrial Revolution. The same is true of renewable energies, long neglected out of laziness, while fossil fuels have been recklessly exploited. This headlong rush to fulfill dreams of economic growth and development is now leading to disenchantment and even to environmental disaster. Health, too, must be ranked among the major challenges of our generation. Even without being a medical historian, I can imagine that health challenges have always been among humanity's primary concerns. Today, it is malignant tumors and cardiovascular diseases. Before that, it was tuberculosis and smallpox, and in the more distant past, the plague. The COVID pandemic basically served, if there was need at all, to underscore the prime importance of health in a life that begins and ends in the abstract. I would add migration to this list, which is like a tectonic shift in our contemporary societies, people displaced en masse by conflicts and economic crises. In broader terms, it is the general demographic trend that is worrying. The United Nations predicts that the world's population will reach 11 billion in 2100. At the turn of the 19th century, it was not even a billion. Technological challenges should not be overlooked either, despite the potential for innovation and growth. Artificial intelligence, in particular, promises to revolutionize our daily lives by opening the door to replacing not just manpower, but brain power too, and calls into question our place in the world no less. Finally, the effects of globalization on our exchanges, on the flow of information, and the disproportionate role played by social media unquestionably call for a rethinking of global governance that is less emotional, better regulated, and more concerted. There is one final issue in the form of an eternal but pious wish. It is, of course, the need for peace, which is both beneficial and precarious, as the ongoing conflict in Ukraine painfully reminds us. These are, in my opinion, the major concerns in our world today and in the world of tomorrow. We must keep in step with the changes they bring about. I believe that this is one of the tasks of politicians who have a duty to prepare society for these challenges so that the interests of our generation and those of future generations are best protected. Our ability to live with dignity and freedom is at stake. I'm glad that Switzerland defends that ability. The path to personal fulfillment is open to all, but solidarity mechanisms are in place to make up for any shortcomings. Democracy is alive and well, and freedom of speech is guaranteed. Fertile ground for a generational contract. However, when it comes to signing, we must be careful not to stifle individual initiative. The role of the state is certainly important, but in my opinion, it should be limited to setting a framework, ensuring that it is respected, guaranteeing the impartiality and independence of the justice system, and providing essential services: health, security, education, infrastructure, and social services. To be clear, the state cannot be the sole signatory of any generational contract. When it comes to the economy, my area of responsibility, it must adhere to the principle of freedom and not interfere with the principles of supply and demand. This liberal characteristic, which is obviously a question of philosophy, not only applies to the economy. In my opinion, this same principle should guide all public policies relating to the challenges I have mentioned. In the United States and the European Union, the state takes a different approach to industrial policy, in that it provides subsidies at great expense for measures such as those to combat climate change. The domestic economy is the main beneficiary. This paves the way for a subsidy race dressed up as climate policy. The American Inflation Reduction Act and the European Commission Green Deal Industrial Plan are heading in precisely that direction, which seems to me to be nonsensical. Governments will never know better than the economy itself which sectors and which products are best suited to solving today's problems while posing the least risk to tomorrow's opportunities. According to classic doctrine, state intervention in free markets is only justified if the market fails. By promoting basic research in new technologies, for example, it is possible, according to this doctrine, to generate large-scale benefits and so stimulate the innovation process. Interventionists believe that because it may not always be clear that the benefits will outweigh the costs, the private sector is often reluctant to undertake research. It prefers to saddle the state with the responsibilities that it is too nervous to assume. According to the same doctrine, imposing taxes on environmentally harmful behavior can be economically justified. Without them, factories would be at liberty to overproduce without regard to environmental damage. Just like waste disposal, greenhouse gas emissions have a price, and this price should logically be paid by the establishment that generate these pollutants. The new doctrine, on the other hand, considers that what political scientists call path dependency, government inertia in the face of new challenges, can only be broken through impetus provided by the state. The proponents of this doctrine argue, for example, that in order to provide an effective incentive for people to switch from petrol-driven cars, there is no point in increasing the CO2 tax on fuel, but that it would be better to expand the network of charging stations using public funds to do so. Politicians have perfectly blended the principles of these two schools, i.e. the carrot and the stick, incitement and dissuasion, Zuckerbrot und Peitsche, as Bismarck said in the 19th century. The problem is that if the market can indeed fail, state or political efforts can fail as well. So any well-funded subsidy program will inevitably make interest groups salivate, but it is hard to say whether the technology or the industry will ultimately benefit from government measures to encourage economic efficiency. I also doubt that the state is best placed to determine the exact amount, neither too low nor too high, of a subsidy, tax or emission limit when it comes to achieving the most efficient results in practical and economic terms. Unfortunately, history shows us that the state is quicker than the private sector to make errors of judgment and management. And if the latter were to make such mistakes, they would in any case be immediately punished by the market. The model I therefore advocate is one in which risk-taking is the responsibility of the private sector, not the taxpayer, and in which costs and benefits are managed where they are generated and achieved. Far be it from me to keep the public sector away from the great challenges of our time, but far be it from me to trust them blindly. Our credo in Switzerland, as an open, innovative, and competitive medium-sized economy, is to look after the general conditions, the main pillars of which are political and monetary stability, tax attractiveness, education, and openness. Prosperity is not built on sand. It's built on values and beliefs. It is only on that basis that the necessary drive to achieve great things can emerge, the drive that enables us, each in our own role, to meet the challenges of tomorrow. In my opinion, these are the prerequisites for the new generational contract, which has been at the heart of your discussions over the last 2 days. In conclusion, it does not seem realistic to me to envisage such a contract solely under the wing of public providence, in that no social project can thrive without the flair and commitment of individuals. Thank you for your future initiatives in this regard, and thank you for listening.
Now, thank you, Mr. Federal Councillor, for your thoughts on a new generational contract. And I've prepared 3 more questions for you that I would be interested in, but you already gave some hints in your speech, but I still would like to ask. First of all, the recent unprecedented takeover of Credit Suisse shook the financial system. The uncommon agreement of the merger without the consent of the shareholders, and also the wipeout of the AT1 bonds raised concern. Now, how do you believe this will affect Switzerland's reputation as a reliable and trusted hub of international finance and business?
It's a difficult question. I think you must see Switzerland was placed in a very difficult situation, and it was very important for the government to find a solution, to have a stability, to maintain a stability, international and national, and we do that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And another topic that was already at the top of our minds last year and continues to be is the war on Ukraine in the midst of Europe. Now, last year, your fellow Federal Council, Ignacio was here on that stage, and he discussed that Switzerland's neutrality would need to be defined differently in light of the Russian invasion. So what has happened since then in terms of rethinking Switzerland's neutrality?
So, first of all, I think Switzerland condemned strongly Russian aggression, and she adopted the EU sanctions. After Switzerland is permanently neutral, she must respect the neutrality as this concept in the Hague Conventions from 1907, and we do that. That means that we can't have, if some countries are in war, actually, we can't support on military this conflict. But neutrality does not mean, neutrality right does not mean that we not have another mind about neutrality. We have a neutrality policy, and I say that we adopted the EU sanctions to show that, and we help with other things.
Mm-hmm. And now a question which maybe shifts more towards our university here, because this is special here, or the University of St. Gallen, and one of your responsibilities is also education. Just in March, a new study found that Switzerland's higher education system to be one of the best in the world. And our university here is having its 125th anniversary this year. So what would be your advice to our university to continue to create value for students and society going forward?
It's not the politician, the politician who must say on the say how. University as HCSG, who successful is to do for the future. I think what's very important is for education you must anticipate the new evolution. It's the role of the education to anticipate, to try to find the future new development, evolution, and with this condition, if you are able to do that, you will have success. But if I, politician, I give you some order, in Swiss German, you will say, wir wollen kein Maulkorb.
Thank you. Now, thank you, Mr. Federal Councillor, for coming here, and it's a big honor for us to have you here in our closing ceremony. Thank you. Thank you. And now, I'm happy to introduce you to two more of our teammates. You've seen them yesterday here in our video. Their names are Gallen and Johannes, and they will be giving the official closing speech of this year's Gallen Symposium. And after that, I'm particularly looking forward to talking to many of you in our main building while having dinner and drinks and getting to know each other and living our motto of cross-generational dialogue. So, Gallen and Johannes, the stage is yours.
Thank you guys for the warm welcome. I think I'll start off to say, let's take a deep breath. We're almost at the end. My name's Gallen.
I'm Johannes.
And we're part of the, of the 52nd International Students Committee, as you probably know by now. The 52nd St. Gallen Symposium is nearly over, and we hope to have inspired you to lead with the next generation in mind. Before you go, we want to give you our answer to a simple but burning question. In the past year, I've met with around 70 executives, some of who I spotted here before, and we had super interesting discussions, but one topic really stood out. How can one meet the needs of the next generation?
Okay, and the simple answer is that we don't have one. We want to share some knowledge of these past years, of these past months. We have gained some insight into your generation. Yeah? If we think about it, we are a student organization catering the leaders of today and those of tomorrow. But give us a couple of years' time, and we will be your future workforce and your future customers. So, as of now, we have acquired a bit of reverse insight, and I think it's time to share that. However, this sharing is not just us. Yeah? The St. Gallen Symposium stands for cross-generational dialogue. We've experienced it over these last 2 days. However, I think the real challenge is not to speak at it at a high level, but to really make it stick, yeah? To work in practice. And for that, we've had valuable insights from people like Ayu Tometi, yeah? We've just seen the video, super inspiring. She's the co-founder of the Black Lives Matter movement. Or Nicolai Tangen, yeah? The CEO of the Norwegian Oil Fund. Or one of my personal highlights just earlier, Alexandra Matvichuk, last year's Nobel Peace Prize laureate. Now, Gallen and me humbly want to build on that by sharing some of our own learnings from these past months.
So we know you all have busy schedules, but you took the time to meet with us during the year, and more importantly, you took the time now. You took 2 entire days to come here and commit this time to mutual learning and long-term topics. So thank you very much for taking this time. Nowadays, I mean, as I said, we have so many short-term issues. In the past 3 years alone, we've had to deal with a pandemic, we've had outbursts of war and economic instability.
So, with all of this going on, why did you take the time? Why did you really come to St. Gallen?
We believe that you're here because you do care about the future. You took the time to come here and actually face the future for 2 entire days. Take this time more often. The future will never pull on you, only the crises will when they're here. So make it a habit. I mean, you can structurally block time in your calendar where you sit down and forget whatever else is going on, but face these long-term issues, tackle these long-term issues.
And to those who are wondering what we are talking about, I want to share a student example. Listen, I might have this really important assignment coming up, but the assignment is not immediately due. I still have 2 more months to finish it. Now, it wouldn't hurt much to start now and write for 15 minutes every evening. But that's just not the way I operate, yeah? When I have the time available, I would much rather enjoy a night out with my good friends. And tomorrow, I have another brilliant idea how to spend the evening not doing my assignment. Okay, so this continues for 7 weeks. Yeah? The 2 months have already passed. It's just 1 last week, and the assignment is due. And Gallen, we are so stressed. I have to finish this. It'll take all-nighters and a lot of stress. And who knows if I will even finish it successfully. Haha, does this sound familiar?
I mean, as you showed in this example, the future will never pull on you. Only the crises will when they're here. So it's the small steps that you take already now that will prepare you for the future and that will get you up that hill. I mean, this is exactly what I was saying before. Structurally block time to actually be able to take these little steps.
But this was only our first learning. Our second learning was with you. Because over this year, we've had the pleasure of seeing many of your great company presentations. And we are so happy for you, yeah? Each and every time you presented, it seems like everything is going so well, yeah? You are the market leader in this niche and successfully followed that projected growth path. Now, we've also learned that these are the same presentations that you give to your new hires.
But are things really going so well? When do you speak about the challenges that you might not have found solutions for? When did those come up? Maybe now, in these past 2 days. But why didn't you talk about these earlier? When someone from the outside joins your organization, they bring their own perspectives, their own way of problem solving. So you can make use of these fresh perspectives, for example, by demystifying your hiring.
Really, show your gaps. Because for us, it's much more exciting to approach challenges head on, yeah? To know we are really helping your organization grow and also to remain resilient in the future. But it's not just Gallen and me or other members from the team or other new hires, yeah? It's also your current employees because they have brilliant ideas. They want to know about your organization's challenges. They want to find solutions because otherwise, why would you have hired them in the first place?
And
I mean, if you think they didn't have these ideas, you would have not employed them. So please embrace speaking about your organization's challenges more. Or we have a room full of leaders. Even better, lead it by example.
so exactly these young talents or new talents or old talents, doesn't matter, everyone in your organization, think about them. Maybe think who or totally different, what builds bridges in your organization? What brings people together from all generations, all, I don't know, everything. Who brings all your people together within your organization? So we've heard of great things that you're doing. I mean, he mentioned it before, the first thing with the, yeah, you're doing great. But also you're actually doing great things with, for example, reverse mentoring, or we've also seen a lot of public cafeterias, open door policies, or maybe you've done volunteer work with your team. There's one thing that we did with our organization that worked really well. It's a little thing we call Thursday Cheers. So every Thursday, we came together as a team. We sat down in a circle, had a beverage, and talked about our week, talked about what went well, what didn't go so well, what were our biggest struggles. And that was really good because it really brought us together, and you could share these success stories, which really rippled throughout our team, throughout our whole organization. And at the same time, you could also tell where are the pain points, who might be fighting silent battles.
Yeah, I mean, sitting on the floor with a beverage might not work for your company, but it worked for us. And the motive of this is just to inspire you, to get your people to talk. Because talking honest, really embracing how we feel like, this is an essential part of our culture. And things like this, we wrote down in our culture statement. And if you have not settled on a culture statement for your organization, I would highly suggest you do so. We had a culture statement, it had 10 points on it, and we literally printed it out 20 times and hung it on every wall. Why did we do so? Because it's really powerful when you have your culture on every wall of the building. And when the culture is violated, you can pinpoint your finger on the culture and say, hey, this is not our standard that we hold ourselves accountable to. Now, to make it more concrete, one line from our statement read, we don't let each other fail. Let that sink in. On every wall of our building, we had a line, we don't let each other fail. And I can tell you, in the rare occasions that we pointed our finger on that line, everybody knew that our culture was at stake. We don't let each other fail.
So to summarize, we learned that encouraging mutual learning and understanding is really important. And you could do this by regularly setting aside time for the future, to face the future. And be open about your organization's challenges, maybe exactly those challenges regarding the future, and also define the pillars of your culture, like we did for our culture.
Okay. In the beginning, we asked ourselves what we want you to take away from this year's Gallen Symposium. We hope to have given you 3 points from our student organization and have shared some insight. But most importantly, we are so glad that you took the time out of your busy schedules to come here and be part of this 52nd Gallen Symposium. You all made this a really special and highly inspiring experience for all of us. Now, Gallen and me, the two of us, we only speak for the 26 students of the International Students Committee who have paused their studies for a year and devoted this 1 year of their lives to bring you together, leaders from different generations, to promote cross-generational dialogue and to face our long-term issues, head on with the next generation in mind. But before we call everybody from the team on stage to really celebrate this moment, I would like to invite you to join us directly afterwards for dinner and drinks in the main building. But now, please welcome the 26 students of the International Students Committee. powerful foundation.
Das ist geil,
Bitte?
Ja, ich glaube, ich gedacht,
Wow, I mean, seeing this after putting in months of work really means a lot, and it's quite overwhelming. So I nearly forgot what I wanted to say, but there's one group I specifically wanted to say thank you to, and they have to work with us all day and sometimes also all night. And this is not always so easy with students, but it is our foundation who supports us, who is responsible for developing also, or for supporting us with our program, with our communities, and without them we would not be standing here today. So I want to also say thank you to our foundation. Thanks.
Be believers, be leaders, be astronauts, be champions.